Irene, a magazine editor, was born and raised in 1973, a year that was marked by a military coup. Everyone, especially the privileged members of society, took the military government's declaration of a state of emergency very seriously, improving it to the phrase, "See no evil, say no evil, tell no evil." As a person, her mother had also given the phrases more significance, to the point where they no longer interfere with matters that are unrelated to them, in order to elevate them to the great social status she desires for them. She resides in the Will of God Manor, a former family home that her mother converted to a nursing home in order to support the family after she passed away. Her small family makes up the majority of her life. Rosa Cleo, her dog, her mother, and some of the elderly residents of the nursing home, including a man they call the Colonel and a woman they call Madame Josephine, are all pictured there. She and her cousin Gustavo, a member of the military, are set to wed. Her life is also very straightforward. Her mother summoned her to the room until her eyes opened that day. When she sees her mother carrying several gifts from Brazil, her mother informs her that Rosa was instructed to leave the gifts in her room. Additionally, she informs her mother that she will be leaving the house. When her mother inquires about what she should do, for example, if Gustavo calls, she assures her that he would not call a different woman. Francisco, a doctor, visits Maria Elena, and she goes to speak with him. The doctor encourages her to describe everything that has happened, so she does. She describes how some men blocked her from the road, and their car overturned. She claims that the man struck them and hurt them. They begged for assistance repeatedly, but they refused. She claimed she wished she had passed away at that point because she was grieving for her son, Gabriel, through the entire problem. She lights up a cigarette to calm herself down before continuing. She claims that if she doesn't want him to kill her husband, the man will ask her to comply with his wishes. She thus consents. Her husband is in the room next to her, and she watches as the man touches and moles her. She claims that after the man left, she heard 2 voices and felt extra hands touch her body when he came back. She was unable to stop them. Francisco, a photographer, searches for Irene at her magazine shop. On the other hand, when he asks at the front desk, her assistant immediately takes him to her office after spotting him. She asks if he is the photographer looking for work as soon as she sees him, and then inquires as to whether or not he is listed on any official government lists. He assures her that he is not listed on the blacklist, and then starts displaying samples of his writing. Instead of staring at them, she asks him if he's hungry and extends an invitation to join her for lunch. She inquires as to whether he had read any of her works, and he responds that he had read one about super hormones in which she uses the phrase, "Conception is rebellion." She expresses her admiration for him and informs him that certain words shouldn't be used in their line of work. Phrases like abortion ass. He also included freedom. She observes that despite how taboo the topic is, he is not afraid to discuss the system. She then asks him if he isn't on any blacklists once more. He explains that his brothers Jose and Javier, or his father, an anarchist who retired in Spain, are likely listed. He is not, though. He is a psychologist who has decided to look for employment outside of photography for weddings and birthdays after realizing that his line of thinking cannot function in that context. She hires him and instructs him to pick her up the following morning for work. The waiter hands her the bill and demands that she pay it while he touches her hands. He goes to Will of God Manor the next day to pick her up. When he first meets her mother, she quickly informs him that she is engaged. She informs him that they will speak with Evangeline, a woman who is thought to possess miraculous abilities. She borrows his bike and follows him on it. When he inquires about Gustavo, she replies that he is a captain and that they were engaged when she was a young girl. She shares with him a poem by Gustavo about the bridegroom of death, and Francisco comes to a stop. Gustavo, he claims, is a fascist who has only ever uttered such words. However, she refutes it. They then carry on with their journey. When they arrive at Evangeline's home, they learn that she will be leaving at noon. By age 12, she emerges to perform her miracles while being photographed and assisted by others. The military shows up. She attempts to explain to them that Francisco works for her and displays her ID, but they handle it poorly. Francisco, the commander asks Fidelio, one of his subordinates, if Evangeline is his sister. The commander believes that his enemy is causing the fire because of the young girl's spirit. He then begins to shoot. When Irene confronts him, he claims that Baudilio told him about his sister's problem and that he now wants to fix it. Evangeline pushes him away and throws him into the mud when he tries to hold her. She moves closer to him and strikes him once more. Irene assures him they will have another chance to address the problem and bids him goodnight as he stands up and orders his soldiers to follow him home, though he does take Francisco's camera's rim with him. He runs into her a few days later and is upset to see her. The weekend was seen. He inquires as to Gustavo's whereabouts and invites her to dinner. She consents to join him for dinner on that Thursday. Gustavo joins them as well. He is introduced to a homosexual man by Irene, but he won't shake hands with him. Francisco is upset by this. They converse as he follows the man home. Irene paid a visit to his house that Thursday. She gets closer to his fascist father, and even though he tells her she is engaged, his mother urges him to wed Irene. Francisco's brother requests that he make sure he tracks down the men who sexually assaulted Maria. He now goes to interview her once more. In order to punish them, he instructs her to give him their names. Later, he and Irene search for Evangeline once more. When they arrive, though, Evangeline's mother informs her that the commander has taken the young woman and has also imprisoned her son. She assures the woman who is crying that she will track down Evangeline. Her life is altered by that sentence. She discusses all the problems and crimes committed by the soldiers. She enters a hospital where there are mutilated people who have been killed by the police while looking for Evangeline. She cannot tolerate it. Jose then requests that Francisco take her out. She tells him they should go back to the office after waiting outside, as one waits by the tree. When he goes to kiss her, she pulls away, telling him that Gustavo had been waiting for her and that she would marry him because of her delay. They went back to his house, but when they arrived, they discovered Javier, Francisco's brother, perched in a tree. The man killed himself. Francisco reveals to her that his brother isn't always like that after his funeral. Before the military destroyed his life, he had a life. And Irene needs to be careful to avoid getting into trouble with the wrong people. Digma, Evangelina's mother, provides directions to Commander Ramirez. Ramirez responds that he had transferred Baudilio the day before and released Evangeline when she confronted him in a seductively dressed manner. Although he tries to touch her, she declines and tells him they can do that another time before she departs to meet a colonel who works with Ramirez. She also keeps a record of everything he says about Ramirez. She meets with Francisco once more and plays the recording on which the colonel claims that Ramirez sexually assaulted Evangelina and then returned carrying a pick and a hoe, indicating that Evangelina had been buried. He informs her that they can collaborate because his brother is working with a cardinal to gather proof against the military. They question Digma, who is also there, about Padilla's hiding place. She visits Padilla by the mountain after learning his location from Digma. He gives him some clothes and then tells him where Ramirez keeps his body. She goes there with Francisco and feels sick to her stomach when she sees the bodies. Francisco is able to take some pictures despite feeling sick as well. They take a joint nap by the mountain after the investigation. He begins kissing her there, and they then engage in sexual activity. They deliver all the available proof to his brother, who then delivers it to the church. When the church explores the mountain, they discover everyone. Irene and Francisco watch the news about it, and Irene's mother storms out, accusing Francisco of corrupting her, and she threatens to inform Gustavo. But she informs her that Gustavo will arrive the next day. She tells Gustavo she is in love with someone else on the day they break up. The sergeant calls her and tells her that he believes Evangelina deserves justice. He presents her with a book detailing all of Ramirez's crimes. He is struck by a car as he is returning home. Additionally, she gives Josefina the book to hold on her behalf. She then receives a shooting by the road a few days later. Gustavo arrives to check on her after she has been taken for surgery. Rosa is hurt by the soldiers as they search her home for the book while she is unconscious. Gustavo realizes he can't save her from what's coming, so he orders Francisco to get her out of there as soon as possible. The general makes sure military personnel are keeping an eye on her hospital. When she awakens, she learns that Ramirez's charges have been dropped and that the general has destroyed all of the evidence. The captain had claimed that terrorists used the mountain. She therefore instructs Francisco to meet Josefina for the book and her audio when she awakens. He informs her that they cannot release it until she leaves the country, and they don disguises to do so. He hands the cardinal the book and audio before departing, requesting that they post them in a week. He disguises himself as a newlywed couple traveling to Spain for their honeymoon and flees with her. They make a hotel stop. Gustavo kills himself by turning on his leaders after learning about the military operations. However, he remains silent. He will be aware of them until his death. They take a horse to flee after the military spots their trail and pursues them. After spending 15 years in Spain, Chile finally captured her thanks to their struggle. Independence. When they eventually made it back to Chile in 1989, the first thing they did was visit Gustavo's grave. The movie ends right here.